Hello students, welcome to my class. So in the previous video, we were talking about some of the metalloproteins as enzyme, that is metal incorporated proteins, how they show different enzymatic activity, that is detoxification of various poisonous substances, chemicals in our body. How do they function as enzyme in our body? So same topic will be continued in this video, where we will be discussing about some more types of metalloproteins that act as enzyme. So the first one, that is superoxide dimutase, also it can be represented as SOD. So what does it do? Usually in the body, whenever there's a partial reduction of O2, it generates some toxic substances like superoxides and peroxides. Superoxides are nothing but O2 having a minus charge. So this is a toxic substance that is generated as a byproduct of partial reduction of O2. And the O2 minus and H2O2 released in the biochemical reaction, they get accumulated in the body of the living organism, and you know that these are poisonous if they are getting accumulated in large number in the body. So some mechanism is required in order to convert them into non-poisonous byproducts, or in order to detoxify them. So here enzyme superoxide dimutase, what it does is that it does the disproportionation of O2 minus. Okay. So one of the best characterized superoxide dimutase which you are going to be studying is the copper zinc containing, because there are different types, but we will be studying about copper zinc containing protein that is usually seen in the eukaryotic cells. Okay. So this kind of superoxide dimutase, that is copper zinc containing one, and it is very stable. Also, it does not release any toxic metals, and disproportionation of superoxide in the presence of redox active metal, that is the copper or zinc. It occurs through a mechanism which is called as a ping pong mechanism, and it is a two electron transfer step. And usually in the absence of this reaction, in the absence of this enzyme, this reaction is very slow at around pH 7. But whenever we use this kind of enzyme, this reaction is catalyzed and it becomes around 10 to the power 4 times faster than how it would be in usual. So we are studying about the structural features of copper zinc superoxide dimutase. So now, one of the, we know that superoxide dimutase, it is present in our erythrocytes. So we are studying about bovine erythrocyte superoxide dimutase, which is one of the one that is mostly studied. It is a dimeric structure that it has two, subunits in it, and it is represented as Cu2Zn2 BSOD, meaning to say bovine erythrocyte superoxide dimutase. Okay. So these two subunits, there is, each of the subunit has one active site in it, and in that active site, in one of the active site there is zinc metal, and in the other active site there is copper metal. So this is one subunit. Here you can see one subunit containing the zinc metal, and this is the one more subunit of this protein containing the copper metal. Okay. And these two subunits, they are bridged through a deprotonated imidazole ring. So can you see this? This is like a bridge between subunit 1 and subunit 2 containing zinc and copper. So what is this? This is an imidazole ring which acts as a bridge between these two subunits, and the overall molecular weight is around 32 kilodalton. And in the resting condition, the Cu2, because the charge is 2 plus 2 on copper, it has a square planar geometry, whereas the zinc, it has a tetrahedral geometry. And here Cu2, as you can see, the Cu2, it is coordinated with four histidyl imidazoles. Okay. Or four histidine chains you can see attached to this copper, that is here histidine 118, histidine 46, histidine 44, and also this is a part of this chain, so this is histidine 61. Okay, and so, and one more thing is, in the axial position, four coordinations are satisfied by the nitrogen of the histidine, and in the axial position you can see a water molecule which is weakly attached to the copper center, and so it has a distorted square pyramidal geometry. And here zinc is coordinated to three histidyl imidazoles, that is histidine 78, 69, and this is also for zinc, that is histidine 61, that is both of them share histidine 61. Along with that, zinc is also coordinated to the oxygen of the carboxylate or carboxylate of aspartate residue. This is the carboxylate of aspartate 81 that zinc has. So zinc has 1, 2, and 3 histidine residue and one carboxylate group of aspartyl residue. Okay, and so zinc gets a tetrahedral geometry, whereas this copper has a distorted square pyramidal geometry. And here in this molecule or protein, zinc, role of zinc is just structural. That is, zinc here, it provides a structural rigidity and all its function is structural related. It has no role to play in conversion of the superoxide to, H2O2. That function zinc is not having. The only function of zinc is structural here. So you can see that if removal of zinc does not diminish the activity of the enzyme, that is, it won't affect the enzyme activity in any ways, but you can also replace zinc by any other metal, and this does not change the activity of the enzyme. That proves that if we remove zinc, it does not affect the activity, but the presence of copper is essential for the activity. So the main activity of the superoxide dimutase here in this protein is controlled by this copper, not zinc. But it has been found that if zinc has been removed, that is zinc depleted protein, it lacks thermal stability and denatures at lower temperature than other proteins. So from this we can understand from this line that what does zinc do? What is zinc's contribution in this protein? It is giving structural rigidity, and if there is no proper structural rigidity, the enzyme can easily get denatured or broken off at high temperatures. So zinc is important for its structural function, whereas copper is required for its functioning. Next is we are studying about the mechanism how this copper and zinc containing superoxide dimutase it functions and how it converts O2 minus to give H2O2 and oxygen. So it is established that the Cu2 center lies, so the Cu2 center, it lies at the bottom of the narrow channel. That is, the Cu2 center, which is very much important for the functioning of superoxide dimutase. It lies at the bottom where there is a channel. Here, there's a channel through which water and other small ions or small ligands can pass. It's like a channel or a pipeline here through which water and other small ions will come and get attached here and interact with the copper. That is, that channel is made for that purpose, so that these small ions can come and interact with copper, and through that channel only this O2 minus will come and interact with the copper. So what does this channel consist of? The lining of the channel consists of positively charged amino acid residues, that is arginine and lysine residues. Okay, so these positively charged residues residing in the lining of the channel of the mouth, what does it do? It facilitates the passage of O2 minus towards the Cu2 center. That is, it helps in passing this O2 minus towards the Cu2 center. through this channel, and other anions, some other anions like N3 minus or cyanide anions, they can inhibit the activity of superoxide dimutase. How? By blocking this channel. It's like a pipeline through which this O2 minus will go and attach to Cu2 and then interact and then get converted. But if something blocks that pipeline, then O2 minus cannot enter and go attached to Cu2. So some ions like N3 minus, Cn minus, they act as inhibitors. So the activity of the superoxide dimutase is inhibited because of these anions. Next is we will study how this ping pong mechanism actually takes place. So, two molecules of O2 minus plus two molecules of H plus in the presence of superoxide dimutase will give you H2O2 and O2. This is actually the reaction that is happening in the presence of superoxide dimutase. That is O2 2 minus superoxide. Two molecules of superoxide in the presence of two molecules of H plus is converted to H2O2 and O2. Again, H2O2 is also a poisonous substance, but some other enzyme will detoxify H2O2 like catalases or peroxidases. Here, what does superoxide dimutase do? It converts these superoxides to H2O2 and oxygen. So this is how the reaction mechanism proceeds. Let us study step by step what is happening in the ping pong mechanism. So first, through that channel, the O2 minus reaches the bottom of the protein channel where Cu2 resides, and O2 minus, it reduces Cu2 to Cu1 producing oxygen. That is, through that channel, this O2 minus will come here the bottom through that channel, and then it gets attached to Cu2. Because of this getting attached, the O2 minus is getting converted into oxygen and the Cu2 is getting reduced to Cu1. That is step number 1. Second step is what? As soon as Cu1 is produced, the bridging imidazolate group is dislodged from the copper center but remains coordinated with zinc and water. So, and gets protonated. So, you can see here, here one bond was there between the copper and this bridging imidazole group which bridges the zinc and copper. But as soon as O2 minus gets converted to O2 and Cu2 gets converted to Cu1, that bridge is cut off. That is that bridging imidazole. Sorry, students. That that bridging imidazole is cut off, and here this nitrogen gets protonated. That is, one H gets added to the nitrogen by water molecule that is present here. What is the next step? Let us see. In the next step, uh, at the next step, the O2 minus anion approaches the and oxidizes Cu1 to Cu2, and O2 minus is reduced to HO2 minus and further protonated by water to give H2O2. So what happens in the next step? Once again, second molecule, because you need two molecules of O2 minus in this, correct? So that second molecule of O2 minus comes, approaches here, and that O2 minus is reduces Cu1 to Cu2, and simultaneously itself gets oxidized to HO2 minus. Okay, that is here you can see HO2 minus, and for this HO2 minus, one molecule of H plus is given by water molecule, and this HO2 minus is getting converted to H2O2. Okay, and that is how this overall reaction proceeds. So here's what is happening to the copper center. It is reduced and oxidized by successive encounters with the superoxide, giving O2 and H2O2 in the respective steps, and zinc is just playing the supportive role here. So, what is the overall step? Once again, can we understand what is happening? One molecule of O2 minus comes here and gets attached to the copper center. And then O2 minus converts the Cu2 here to Cu1. As it converts Cu2 to Cu1, it itself gets converted into O2. From O2 minus, it is getting converted to O2. And as the Cu2 gets converted to Cu1, this bond between nitrogen and copper, that is between the copper and the imidazole nitrogen, breaks off, and this imidazole nitrogen gets protonated by water. That is, it gets one proton. So you can see that this is step number one, where one that oxygen is released. You know that in the final step, that is in the final reaction, we have one oxygen and one H2O2. So this oxygen is given out in this step, that is step number one. Okay, after that what happens? One more molecule of O2 minus comes and attaches over here, that is, it helps to convert the Cu1 to Cu2 again. As soon as Cu1 gets converted to Cu2, this copper forms a bond with this nitrogen again. And as this conversion takes place, simultaneously O2 minus, which is converting Cu1 to Cu2, gets converted to HO2 minus. Okay. After that, this HO2 minus gets protonated by water, that is, one H plus gets added to HO2 minus to give H2O2. So this is the overall reaction mechanism. And what is this H2O, students? Here attached to copper. This is where the step number one begins. This H2O, you can see that, in the structure, you can see one H2O is there, correct? This is where that O2 minus comes and attaches. This is weakly bound. That is the fifth coordination with water of the copper. Fifth coordination is weakly bound. This H2O is then in this mechanism, it is replaced by O2 minus. So H2O is its place is taken by O2 minus, and this full reaction proceeds. And once this reaction proceeds and this part is cut off, that is, it goes out as H2O2, once again that part, that coordination or that spot is filled by water. And like this cycle goes on. Next type of metalloprotein is ascorbic acid oxidase. It is also called as a Bru oxidase protein because it consists of copper. So its another name is also copper oxidase protein. Okay. Why is it called ascorbic acid oxidase? Is because it converts ascorbic acid to dehydroascorbic acid. That is, one of the hydrogen is being removed and it is converted, one of the OH hydroxide bond is getting converted to double bond O. So it is called as, this is the dehydrogenation reaction. So it is catalyzed by ascorbic acid oxidase in the presence of oxygen, and here oxygen then by the end of the reaction gets converted into water molecule. So this blue protein, it is found in plants and microorganisms. What does it do? It catalyzes the oxidation of ascorbic acid to dehydroascorbic acid, and O2 itself is reduced to water. Next, how is the structure? So this is not the entire structure. This is the structure of just one subunit. So this enzyme has a molecular weight of around 75 kilodaltons for each of the subunits. So a single subunit weighs around 75 kilodalton. It is composed of two polypeptide chain, and there are 8 copper centers per molecule. Okay, so in one molecule there are 8 copper centers. So one molecule, it consists of two subunits, and each of the subunit has 4 copper centers. So this is the structure of just one of the subunits. Same way, there is one more subunit containing 4 more copper atoms. So in each of the subunits there is 4 copper atoms. So 4 plus 4, together there is 8 copper atoms. So these copper atoms, they are of different types. So one copper atom is of type 1, and then one copper atom is of type 2, and then two copper atoms, they are of type 3. Okay, one type 1, type 2, and two are of type 3. And the intense blue color arises when this enzyme, it is in the oxidized form due to the type 1 copper side, and the reduced form, this enzyme, it is colorless. And the electron that is given out by ascorbic acid, it enters, this is the electron that is given out, it enters the protein chain through the histidine residue ligating type 1 copper, that is it enters from here to this copper which is ligating with the histidine residue. Okay, then it is carried through a number of covalent bonds to the trinuclear site. So this is a trinuclear site that contains three copper atoms, which is about 13 Armstrong away. And where oxygen, here oxygen comes and gets reduced to water. So this electron that is given out by ascorbic acid enters from here, then through different covalent bond it travels around 13 Armstrong, because type 1 is around 13 Armstrong away from this trinuclear site. And trinuclear site is the site where the O2 enters and gets converted to water. So now let's study the mechanism and how this enzyme converts ascorbic acid to dehydroascorbic acid. So you can see here, this is the ascorbic acid molecule and this is our enzyme, that is copper oxidase enzyme. So here what happens initially is that there is a elimination of H3O plus. Two molecules of H3O plus gets eliminated. That is this H2 and OH combine together to remove H3O plus. Same way here also H2 and OH combine together to give H3O plus. So you can see in the next step there is elimination of two molecules of H3O plus, and this copper enzyme is now forming an cyclic intermediate here. Next there is a step called as formation of free radical, that is formation of ascorbate radical. So what happens here is this bond breaks here and this oxygen gets a minus charge because this electron of this bond is taken up by this oxygen. Whereas this bond breaks here and leads to the formation of free radical. That is, one electron is taken by copper and one electron is taken by this oxygen. So oxygen gets a dot on it indicating that it is a free radical and this enzyme goes out. Okay, so this is the formation of ascorbate radicals. So AAO enzyme oxidizes ascorbic acid in two steps, that is one electron transfer step through the formation of free radical, that is you have seen that there is a formation of free radical, and the final step this radical, the free radical gets oxidized. So in the, what happens once there is formation of ascorbic or ascorbate radical is the Cu2 enzyme, it comes once again, there's one more subunit, correct, that comes and it oxidizes this O dot to give double bond O. And this minus charge on this oxygen shifts here between this oxygen and carbon to give double bond O. So both the sides they have double bond O in them. And meanwhile, the Cu2 enzyme is once again reduced to Cu1 enzyme. So this is the overall step how ascorbic acid, which had OH here, both the sides got converted into double bond O. Now you want to get back the enzyme, correct? This is the Cu1 enzyme which has to be brought back to Cu2. So in this step, the oxygen that we're using here, we were using oxygen, correct? That oxygen comes into picture in this step, that is to regenerate the enzyme. So Cu1 enzyme in the presence of oxygen and H plus gets converted into Cu2 enzyme, and also along with that there is a byproduct formation, that is water. That is how we get water in the overall reaction. Okay, so with this we have completed the mechanism. So next we'll be studying about vitamin B12 and coenzyme. So vitamin B12, it is isolated as cyanocobalamin, and in anemic condition arises due to impaired absorption of cobalamin in intestinal lumen. So this vitamin B12, it is also called as cobalamin because it is isolated from cyanocobalamin. And in our intestine, if it's not able to, you know that vitamins are absorbed in our small and large intestine. So if it's not able to absorb this vitamin B12 well in our intestine, the patient might have anemic condition. So why does this improper absorption of vitamin B12 lead to anemic condition? You know that anemic condition is seen in patients who do not have enough hemoglobin and myoglobin in their body. So, how is this connected to vitamin B12? Is that this cobalamin or vitamin B12? It is responsible for the synthesis of succinyl cofactor A or coenzyme A, which is required for the synthesis of porphyrin. The porphyrin, you know, you have studied the structure of hemoglobin, correct? It contains the porphyrin ring. So, that is synthesized from succinyl coenzyme, which is indirectly synthesized by cobalamin. So, if you are not able to absorb, your intestine is not able to absorb enough vitamin B12, then the synthesis of porphyrin that is required for hemoglobin is not possible. That's why the patient will have anemic condition. So let's study about the structure. What are first of all, what are some of the distinct features of this cobalamin? So it is one of the only vitamin which has a metal, that is cobalt in the center, and it has a metal carbon organometallic linkage in it, and also it is required by all higher animals, that is especially in humans. Okay, because we need hemoglobin, that is the oxygen transport protein in our body, correct? Transport and storage. So it's required in all higher animal, but it is synthesized only by some bacteria, and then we are consuming it through some other source, and it is involved in the methylation of mercury to generate toxic chemicals like CH3Hg plus. That is one of its distinct functions. So let us study the function. What is the structural feature of vitamin B12? First of all, they are differentiating the Corin ring of vitamin B12. Corin ring is a ring that is a skeleton of vitamin B12, and this is porphyrin that is seen in hemoglobin. So first of all, they are telling the difference between the porphyrin ring and the Corin ring. Corin ring is seen in vitamin B12, porphyrin is seen in hemoglobin and myoglobin. Then from vitamin B12, it helps in the synthesis of porphyrin ring. Okay. So let's understand here the tetrapyrrole microcycle ring cobalt coordinates to the cobalt center. So this is the overall structure of vitamin B12 which you should know to draw. So the overall, this is the Corin ring, and it is coordinated to the cobalt center, which is the main metal that is present in vitamin B12. Okay. So this macrocycle or this ring, now we are just studying about this ring and how it is different from the porphyrin ring. Okay. So this macrocycle is described as a Corin ring, and how is it different from the porphyrin ring? That is, there is a missing of one methylidine linkage, that is here. Can you see here and here? Can you see the difference here? There is a missing of one methylidine linkage between the adjacent pyrrole rings, that is A and D. Here also there is adjacent rings, but there is a missing of that one linkage, which makes Corin ring different from the porphyrin ring. And because of this, the conjugation extends over only 13 atoms. Because here you can see alternate single and double bond throughout the ring, whereas here the alternate single and double bond is seen only till here. Okay, therefore the conjugation is seen when there is alternate single and double bond, like in case of benzene, correct? So this here, because it is extended only till 13 atom, because of the absence of that alternate single and double bond over here, there is a blocking of delocalization. That is, delocalization of electrons exists only when there is alternate single and double bond. Since there is no alternate single and double bond over here, there is a blocking of delocalization between A and D ring, which makes, because of which this Corin ring is more flexible compared to that of the porphyrin ring. And because of that flexibility, this ring or cobalamin, that is vitamin B12, which has this ring, it can adopt a different conformation that is required for its biological function. So next, this cobalt center, it lies approximately in the plane of the corrin ring. So you can see this is a corrin ring, and cobalt center lies in the plane of the corrin ring. And corrin ring, there is only one NH2, one NH group. So you can see here one NH group is there in the corrin ring, whereas in porphyrin there are two NH groups. So one more difference is corrin ring has only one NH group, whereas porphyrin has two of them. Okay. After that, at the periphery of the corrin ring, the carbon atoms are fully saturated by amide moieties. That is here, periphery of this ring, all amide moieties are attached or amide groups are attached. So at position 2 and 7 and 18. So 2, 7 and 18, you can see this group, that is CH2 CONH2. Can you see it? CH2 CONH2. That group is called as a bears acetamide group, while that is called as a acetamide group. Okay, while in position 3, 8 and 13, that is 3, 8 and 13, you can see this group, that is CH2 CH2 CONH2, which is called as a propanamide group. Okay, and one more distinct feature is attached to carbon number 17. So this is carbon number 17. There is N substituted propanamide. That amide is attached or connected to this ribonucleotide, which in once again is connected to a benzimidazole. So this is, you can see benzene ring here, and this is imidazole because it has two nitrogen. So this carbon number 17 is connected to a propanamide, which is connected to a ribonucleotide, which is connected to a benzimidazole. So this is an important feature. And one of the nitrogens of this benzimidazole, it coordinates with this cobalt center. So four coordinations are satisfied by four nitrogens, whereas fifth is satisfied with by this nitrogen of the benzimidazole ring. Okay. After that, the sixth site, it remains vacant and it is coordinated by water or oxygen or any other alkyl group that is coming. So you can see the sixth site R. Here you can see the sixth site R, that is kept vacant, and that is for any alkyl group or water or oxygen. So this is one more important topic, that is oxidation state of cobalt in this cobalamine. So there are different types of cobalamines that exist, different types of vitamin B12, like B12A, B12B, B12S. So different B12, vitamin B12 enzyme will have different oxidation state on the cobalt. So the cobalt center may exist in different oxidation state in the biological system. So B12A, that is aquacobalamine, the CO3, that is, it has a +3 oxidation state. The cobalt here has 3 oxidation state and it remains in low spin and red in color. Whereas in B12R, that is cobalt remains in low spin state, but it is in brown color. Okay, and in B12S, it is cobalt exists in +1 oxidation state as CO1 species, and this B12A and B can be converted to B12R, that is B12R containing cobalt 2. So cobalt 3 can be converted to cobalt 2, which once again can be converted to cobalt 12S also. So all these reductions, they are carried out by NADH and FADH2. And what is the electrophilic and nucleophilic character of this cobalamine? That is how, what is the coordination system that they are present in? That is, in cobalt 3, in cobalamine having cobalt 3, it is a 6 coordinate system and it consists of 18 electrons. Okay, and there is a weakly bound ligand in the sixth, that is sixth coordination is satisfied by a weakly bound ligand. If it is lost, it gives fifth coordination. Okay, After that, in cobalt 2, it's a 6 coordinate system containing 19 electrons. That is, when cobalt 3 changed to cobalt 2, one extra electron gets added to the ring. So it changed from 18 to 19 electron. And in 5 coordinate system, it produces 17 electrons. And in cobalt 1, it is a 4 coordinate system, that is, it consists of 16 electrons, and it experiences oxidative addition. So another important aspect under this is what are the functions of cobalamin or vitamin B12. One thing you have to note here is that vitamin B12 may not directly act as an enzyme in various reactions, but it acts as a coenzyme and works with different enzymes. What is a coenzyme? It is something that works in partnership with another enzyme to catalyze different reactions. So vitamin B12 in many of the reactions it will not get directly involved, but it will act as a coenzyme which can activate another enzyme to carry out certain type of reaction. So if vitamin B12 is not there, that another enzyme which is there won't get activated and that reaction will not occur. That's why vitamin B12 is important. So let's study some of its function. That is isomerase reaction through 1, 2 shift. This is nothing but here there is a shifting of group from exchange of groups. Okay. That is here hydrogen was on carbon 1 and carbon number 2 had some group here, some small group. What happens in the reaction is there is a shift. You can see hydrogen group got migrated to carbon number 2 and that X or any small group that was there got migrated to carbon number 1. So vitamin B12 coenzyme dependent enzyme. So here vitamin B12 is acting as a coenzyme and the enzyme which is dependent on it carries out the exchange of position between hydrogen atom and other small groups on adjacent carbon in any organic substrate. So this is also described as a hydrogen transfer enzyme because it is doing the work of hydrogen transfer. Under this only there is diol hydrogenase reaction. It uses B12 coenzyme to interchange H and OH this time on the vicinal diol to eat intermediate germinal diol. So this is the intermediate germinal diol wherein the H and OH group is being interchanged. That is OH group is put over here and H group is sent over here. So you can see here it becomes CH2 from this H coming over here and this OH that was there, one more OH comes here, it becomes OH2. After that, this is an intermediate which is further getting converted, which undergoes dehydration. That is, you can see this H2O leaves or it undergoes dehydration to give RCHO. So, same type of reaction occurs in the presence of glutamate mutase enzyme having vitamin B12 as a coenzyme. And the next reaction which is biologically very important, that is the conversion of methyl mannonyl coenzyme A to succinyl coenzyme A. Okay, this is also done in the presence of methyl mannonyl coenzyme A mutase enzyme is also required, plus vitamin B12 enzyme is also required as a coenzyme over here. Okay, so this reaction, why is it biologically very important? It is because this succinyl coenzyme A that is synthesized by the end of this reaction is very much essential in the biosynthesis of porphyrin. Porphyrin, as you know, is a part of hemoglobin, which is required for synthesis of hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochrome. This is why this reaction is said to be biologically very, very important, which is catalyzed only in the presence of vitamin B12. Next important function of vitamin B12 is it does bioalkylation or biomethylation. What is biomethylation, student? Biomethylation is a process where to a substance there is addition of methyl group that is coming from another substance. So this reaction is also catalyzed by vitamin B12. Here you can see a reaction where there is a conversion of homocysteine to methionine, that is homocysteine is converted to methionine in the presence of vitamin B12 coenzyme, also in the presence of METHF. So this is the structure of METHF. Homocysteine, here you can see what is the difference between homocysteine and methionine. Only here it had SH, that is, it had one hydrogen here. That hydrogen here in methionine is replaced by SME, that is the methyl group. So, where did this methyl group come from? It came from METHF, that is methyl tetrahydrofolate. Okay, so methyl tetrahydrofluorate, this is the structure of methyl tetrahydrofluorate where N5 is attached to CH3. So in the presence of this vitamin B12 coenzyme, what happens? This CH3 group of the methyl tetrafluorate is transferred to homocysteine, that is here, and this H is replaced by this CH3, which gives you methionine. So this reaction, that is biosynthesis of methionine from homocysteine, it is catalyzed by vitamin B12. One more, as we already I already studied, we told that this vitamin B12, because of this is the same example under biomethylation. Vitamin B12, it produces this poisonous substance, that is CH3Hg plus. How does this happen? This also happens by biomethylation. So there is a protein containing methyl group. This happens in the presence of vitamin B12. What happens? To Hg2 plus, that is a metal ion that is present, there is the transfer of this methyl group giving CH3Hg plus, and this coenzyme remains as such. Okay, so this is called as methylation. So, ME group transfers leads to methane formation from methanogens in bacteria, which is seen in our environment, and also CH3Hg plus formation is also carried out by cobalamin. Okay, so here methyl radical transfer causes one electron oxidation of methyl group accepting substances, and this can occur in two possible ways, that is methyl radical transfer or carbanion transfer. So in the second example you can see that methyl group is not itself getting transferred, but there is a transfer of methyl radical here taking place. So there are two ways in which it can occur, that is, one is methyl radical transfer or carbanion, that is CH3 itself, that is happening in steps 1, that is CH3 itself gets transferred over here. Okay, so here we studied about biomethylation, that is methylation of different, metals that is occurring in two different ways. First step you saw biomethylation of Hg or mercury. How was it? By transfer of carbanion itself, that is by transfer of CH3 minus from the protein. And in the second example you saw transfer of methyl group as a free radical, that is methyl radical getting transferred to the chromium center. So these are the two ways of biomethylation. So this biomethylation, is it a good thing or a bad thing? It depends on where it is occurring. So if this is happening in the environment, then it can lead to accumulation of CH3Hg plus, which is a poison in the environment. So this can lead to poisoning. So vitamin B12 does not just have good aspects, some of its application can lead to generation of poison as well. So some more example, some biomethylation of heavy metal by certain bacteria, it can cause different environmental problems. So you know that, the best example is that CH3Hg plus, which is a product of biomethylation. It is an environmental hazard. Accumulation of this CH3Hg plus in soil or water bodies can cause harm to environment. One more example is Paris green, that is, it is an arsenate compound which on biomethylation by different bacteria will give trimethyl arsine, which that is, this is called as Paris green. which is usually a pigment in the wallpaper, that is wallpaper coating that we give to the walls. So it is a pigment present in that. Due to some of the bacteria that cause biomethylation, it gets biomethylated to give trimethyl arsine, which can lead to arsenic poisoning if it is exposed to human or any other organism. So we discussed one more example is biosynthesis of acetate from carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide from biomethylation, it can give you acetate. Okay. Also, last example is reduction of ribonucleotides. So, vitamin B12 can also catalyze the reduction of ribonucleotide to give deoxyribonucleotide. It is also one of the examples. So, three important example is one of the first one is isomerase reaction, that is shifting of groups. Second important application was biomethylation that we studied, and the last one is reduction of ribonucleotide. With this we have completed metalloprotein topic, and we have also completed unit 2. So I hope you are preparing and studying. Thank you for attending my class, students. Take care. Bye.